fetching sync app service that's written in C++, Objective-C, and it will run on every platform FileMaker has, including runtimes, every bit of it. No more sync buttons, no more script-driven data transfers. It's all asynchronous. The user will never be interrupted, no matter what they do. We'll just get into the demo and start it because we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to pull up just the data. So Haploo platform is built on Azure Cloud. We have some proprietary Node.js code and some instances that we've configured that allow us to scale really, really quickly on Azure. The benchmarks show that we can easily run up to 40,000 within our infrastructure and our code base. So you can have 40,000 simultaneous active connections moving data. And I don't mean in terms of, oh, they have a socket connection and they're doing nothing. I mean they're actually able to move bits and pieces of data at the same time as 40,000 other devices. On top of that, we can scale and leverage your communications of your apps and where it's deployed globally. You say, now I'm in the China market. You just flip switches on Azure. They did all that. Can't take credit for that. They have that built in. So it's really nice. So Alexi, if you can pull up this screen down here. I don't know the name. It's going to be top left, I think. Go ahead and minimize that. And you can actually see already in this middle monitor that app's done 3 fetches today since I reinstalled the latest version. And what a fetch is in the iOS world is Apple's OS lets you allocate certain amounts of time depending on how active the user is within the app. And they give you a certain amount of background time to crunch data without that user ever opening it. I did a 1 month long test, and as you go in and out of the app frequently throughout the weeks, that time actually increases what they allot you. So the final week of that test in that month, my app actually fetched 70 times for a total of about an hour and a half worth of minutes that the user never had to see any of that activity. So all these apps that you're looking at right now are offline apps. The Mac apps, the Windows components, they're all offline files, right? None of this is hosted, so that way it works on the airplane or in really horrible latent situations, right? And that's what we want because what we have found out within our organizations, I'm from the gaming industry, we have about, my employer has about 25,000 slot machines and we have about 250 technicians. And so we're all over the place and never do we have any adequate network connectivity to report service and parts and those types of issues. So that madness kind of led us, drove me to this project to begin with. And so I took just a standard startup solution from FileMaker, and I wanted to see how fast I can load this onto our API and our backbone framework. And it took about 7 minutes, and I don't have to do anything server side. So when you sign up, you get keys, you put the plugin in the appropriate installation path, depending on what platform you're using, and you call 3 functions. And then it wires your entire schema automatically and allows you to control certain background tasks. So I'll just go here real quick, and I will make an edit. There. And now it's done. It sent the data. No FileMaker script ran. We actually are watching the data, a calc that we'll get into that just feeds us this data the whole time. So you could actually deploy this entire solution without writing one FileMaker script, because FileMaker scripts are blocking I/O. When they run, you see a will every time. There's no way around it, right? It's not it's not a multi-threaded thing to you guys to be able to use that. And so one cool thing that we added is we added this pull to refresh feature that you used to see in your email, right? This blue bar, if you can zoom in right here, Alexi, on the top left, yeah. This this scroll to refresh, if you can see it spinning right there, it's kind of small. That's native UI that we're embedding inside FileMaker on the fly. And you're going to see more of that here in just a moment. And so what happens, like with your email, people are looking for that feature, right? That aren't used to the FileMaker quirkiness of things, right? And so when you go into your task up here, right, you have your data there. I can't remember what task I was in, or if I'm even connected. But so the point of that was whatever native UI components that you guys want to incorporate, you can. We can do toggle switches, picture grids that zoom in and out, just like all the other native apps have, relatively easily. And so what's happening to make this work? There are 9 triggers that start initializing a sync function, meaning push data that's pending and get data that I don't have, right, in the background. The 9 triggers are, if I leave this screen, I have 3 minutes. I'm using 3 minutes right now to do whatever I want. User's not watching. They don't have to wait. They can close it and put it in their pocket, and I still get my 3 minutes. That's the time iOS allots me to do whatever task I need to do. And so I can push data to the cloud. I can download the data from the cloud and put it into FileMaker database for the next time that they open it. And there's no rendering that has to buffer when the file launches, like we have to run a script to read it. And what's happening is we have a SQLite in a directory that we install that acts as an SSL cache. So whatever needs to come down hits there. And then as FileMaker slowly wants to absorb this or quickly, depending on what kind of threads and resources iOS is allotting the app at the time, it just reads off this cache. So the connection for FileMaker, the app, is instant, because it's only ever reading locally in a local directory, which is amazing. So I can actually move 1 million records in 60 seconds, because I'm not going through the UI, I'm not going through the XML view system that they have. I'm going straight in the Draco from SQLite. So needless to say, that's one trigger, the 3-minute suspending the app. Now it's going to background fresh throughout the day, right? You can also enable push data, like email push, if you want. I caution you on that because Apple gets pretty strict on how often you get to push content. So if you just start spamming a phone in the background, they'll probably just block you. So use it for very important tasks, like updating the app. So you create a new app version and you want to push it out, that's what you would do. So let's take a look here, make sure I'm still on the correct connection. So actually, it's already 8:15. I want Alexi to take over the push app because I'm not going to make it through all those. Yeah, on the chat. So,
no, do it.
Okay. So we made a chat app to show you the push features that we can offer. And so I gave all these iPads names, where you go into about settings and you can type in a name, like your name, and every time you connect to your computer or something, it says a name. So I gave this guy the name of, let's see, what is it? Steve, right? And Steve opens up a FileMaker app, and he wants to send a message to Alice, right? And so what I'm going to do is create an entry. Oh, did it drop? Thank you. It's trying. Go ahead and blow up the chat app. And so what I just did was I sent, let's see, did I send it? No. A push notification to Alice if she's up here, which would be. Here's Alice. It doesn't look like there's enough connectivity. Yeah, there's not enough connectivity at the moment because we have to use the Wi-Fi to get to the screen. But normally, whenever we're not piggybacking off a router to get to this screen, it would just do a push message and you click on it. One of the cool features about the push is it's typically instantaneous under the right environments. Another thing we can do with push is, where is it? Is pretty cool. So you have an app, and a lot of use cases apply this. You need to make an appointment for something, and you want to send your customer a confirmation for that appointment, like a doctor's office, a legal office. And so what you can do now with our API and platform, you can create a new appointment, teeth cleaning. Maybe the doctor's doing this, or the dentist rather, and where it is, and the date of the appointment, right? And then you hit done. And for the demo, you can actually send this invite to a, you can send the invite in the background, which means if you send it in the background.
Make it on the screen, to the screen.
Oh, you see, oh, it fall off again? Can never get good connectivity. That's what I'm saying. So if you send this message, and let's say it goes here, right? What would happen, and I don't know which other iPad has the other app as the customer. It's not loaded. Great, I don't see it. So essentially, if the other iPad was up, I think they had to take it off. It would send a push notification with the choices on it, and there's a spot in the pamphlet that shows those options. I don't even see where the other one is. I don't see the other app. So anyway, not sure where it went, but what happens is you send that appointment here, right? And the customer will get a pop-up that you press hard on, and it will say confirm, maybe, reject. And we actually let you do a callback script. It may be easier just to go to the lines since these don't look like they're connecting up there very, very well. So let me pull this up. It don't look like the connectivity's up through that Netgear. Figures. So to configure the API, I'm going to log in. To configure the API, and you can put this function anywhere. I put it here just for the sake of quickness, but I would probably put it inside the security area or in a layout that is secured versus a script personally. So this is what you start with, and this can be in a formatting field, a layout trigger, a calc field. This is where you start once you sign up for the services. Ew, that's not very legible. But so we introduced this concept of push tags. So whenever your user logs in, you can dynamically define who they are as a categorical representation of that individual. Maybe they're hourly employee, salary employee, female, male, age range, right? Average purchase price of a product. You can assign these arbitrary attributes to the system, but they're meaningful to your business, and create push groups, right? And create rules around that. So once I log in as Nate, I would dynamically get my account name and maybe do some query somewhere within the database or to the cloud to define me, right? That gets pushed up to the Microsoft Cloud Services. And now anytime you want to send messages to somebody that is a male hourly worker, you would go down here into the push configuration, which will be on the next function, and it will automatically find those individuals for you, similar to distribution groups for email, right? Which is a huge chore to begin with managing tokens and such for the push services. So in the middle section, you can actually control what types of syncing you want on. You can do, you say, I want to sync every night at midnight while they're probably sleeping and the phone's charging in their house on Wi-Fi. You can say you want to do background fetches. You want to do silent sync where they don't know it's happening. But, and you can toggle those however you would like. We will have more videos and literature on each one of those modes online, because it could probably take 4 hours to go over when and why you'd want each of those things. Not necessarily to configure it, because it's just a true or false operation here. And then the last part is the registration, the Haploo registration plugin call that actually binds our native frameworks inside all the platforms to your cloud service. And your cloud service, when we build this for you, can be anything you want it, but at the bare minimum, we build you your own SQL server, your own SQL database, configured how we need it to basically dynamically link to any database you give us. And we build your node front end and everything else you need in the push services. We build you like 17 different services and configure it perfectly to work with your FileMaker solution, and you don't even have to mess with it, right? And so that's all we need from you to know that that's your services, right, to the endpoint. So Alexa, go to one of the Azure sync functions within the table. Under, I think I have one under so once you register, that's step one. And then when you register at step one, you'll pick a table that you want to sync, right? Let's say you have 9 different tables in your solution. You only want to sync 3. Maybe some are for like UI options and GUI or whatever, right? Or just like for drop downs, you feed drop down data into them, right? But you only want to actively sync when they're editing like a customer layout or an orders layout, right? Or you can sync every table, it's up to you, right? So in this one, what you do is you double click Azure, go ahead and open that up, Alexi, Azure. You add a field, and in the validation, you add validate by calculation, and you call this function, but really you only have to call this bottom line right here. The top stuff are rules for when notices get triggered as a result of a record being modified or changed or created. So for example, I think in this scenario, we're inviting somebody as a result of them becoming a new customer, right? So you create an array, and so when this record gets modified, it'll evaluate whatever fields in the record you're looking for. Maybe a birthday is a certain month, or a temperature, or something like that. Whatever you want to make a decision on, and you build one item or object in the collection, and you can build, or 100, and it'll do 100 different messages to 100 different people, all off one record edit, right? Because it's dynamically being resolved. And we think that's really cool, because now we're giving you the ability to do something that's historically been kind of difficult to juggle these tokens. What do the tokens mean? When do you push? And there's no fidelity in push, because just because Apple sends it doesn't mean they get it, right? Your phone could be off or out of service, and it may never make it, because it sometimes doesn't honor the telemetry of the service. And so what we made also is a type. You set the type of the push notification, and now we'll give you button choices. In this one, it's accept or deny the meeting. I have 22 different layouts for when the push comes into the customer screen, where you can say view, dismiss. That's one combo, that's one type. Please and thank you, or no thank you, right? That's one type. And so you put your message in, and I'll give you those buttons. When the customer clicks that button, you guys get to decide what the magic is after that, right? You can say, call script get invite info. It will take their button, click, give you a JSON payload back to that call as a get script parameter, and you parse it, and then you can edit records, you can modify records, you can update a record in their app as a result of that, or send it back to your apps for your team instantly. Even if they don't want to launch FileMaker SDK. And that's pretty powerful, I think. So you can literally say, I approve or reject like a work order or something. And they never even have to launch your app. That's pretty amazing. So they don't have to wait, they don't have to go log and sync, make sure the data is coming down to the offline app. And so we really think that this design pattern will last us at least a couple of years, 3 years, before we have to look at changing it. And you can see down here as your parameter options, what groups you want to send to. You say, I want to send a please or thank you message to all hourly staff, and you put the groups in. And that's a whole nother session talking about how you can actually use expressions to decide groups. So I want to send a push to accounting, but not Bob in accounting. So you do accounting and exclamation point Bob. And so it'd send it to everybody in accounting except for Bob. And so you can start chaining in this logic that you find in if statements and case statements to subtract and create unions and subsections of groups of people. That's really, really powerful, right? I want to find all females that bought something in the last 30 days that was over $150 at Macy's. Except if they bought it on Saturday with a promotion. Then you push to them, your marketing campaign. That's pretty powerful logic if you get to that point, right? That's a whole other challenge, right? So what's happening here is when this table validates a record that's being created or modified, right? It runs this validation. It says, oh, what's happening here? Someone entered a number in a number field, and we grab everything they just did. We bundle it up, we do a bunch of algorithms on it to package it in a way that you can send it to a different FileMaker file. It does not have to be the same FileMaker file. And let's go to that, Alexi. But this essentially is what's collecting all that data that your customers are putting in to the app, and then sticking it out, pushing it out the back door, and we send it off whenever it can go. And you can actually be in airplane mode on a plane, make 100 orders on the plane, because there's nothing else to do on a plane, and put the phone in your pocket, and as soon as you walk in the airport, and so far, this has been the worst place for reception, obviously, but so far, every time that I've went to airplane mode, waited an hour, waited 4 hours, and even did photographs, they load in 3 seconds to the server, or to the cloud platform, which is remarkable. Because usually we have to call and say, hey, can you log in your app and hit that sync button so you can run that sync script? And like, no, I don't ever remember to do that. We don't have to do that with my mail. Why do I have to do it with this? Well, it's a special situation. So that's pretty powerful to be able to have that. I'm probably not doing it justice because it took 5 extra minutes to set up, but please, when we get the video and the walkthrough of the logic and the demos online, and you guys able to download those, check it out because it will change how your users experience your apps, big time. I'll probably have more vacation time. So this is done. We captured the edit. We captured the new record. We pushed it to the cloud. We mapped the schema. We cloned the entire schema into an algorithm that goes with the record. So even if this file doesn't get this, another file does, because everyone's doing this, the separate module type system, the separate file system, where you do 3 different files in your solution. We can still sync across all those files, right? No problem. So Alexi, go to right here. So right here, we have a function you call called generate IDs. So what we're trying to do is abstract the FileMaker definition of the schema. We don't want to care about file names. You might change the name of your FileMaker file. I don't want to rely on that to make sure the data gets back to your file. So this will generate a UUID with a special prefix that when a record comes into your file, that's all I'm looking for to put that record in its place. I'm not looking for the table name it used to be 3 years ago or a year ago or a month ago, because maybe you wanted to change it. Go ahead, change any item in this, And data that was loaded last week will still go with integrity because it's looking for IDs and numbers. It's not looking at the abstraction for what we call it to make us more familiar with those items, right? So that's really nice to do in that way. So, and we also go to the tables, we'll show them the file one, and then we'll move on to we also make a table name that says file ID, and it's a UUID. So now we have all this uniqueness, and you can run this function we have, and it'll generate all those items for you. So now you have a completely globally unique solution. And what's really cool about that is I have file Santa Claus or whatever, orders, and I have a file called customers, and they may never even link together. But the second I put those keys, that table ID and the file ID, nested in another file, the record will duplicate across all different files, which is pretty powerful when you start looking at sharding like Facebook does. So anyway, let's go to the security panel. And so that was you run that once on your solution. It builds that uniqueness. You run the register function. You run that function in the validate for which table. If you have a field you don't want to sync, put an underscore in front of it. We ignore it, right? We exclude it. And there's a bunch of other little quirks you can toggle because we want to give you all the customization that you want and need, right? So go ahead. It should just be admin. Okay, so go to login, for example. So one thing I don't, that I like is I like my own branded login screen with my logo or my customer's logo, whoever I'm making a solution for. I don't like the generic, the white, it looks the same. I have people say, what is this file? Is it broke? Because they're expecting it to act and behave like native apps, and no native app shows you a file name before it loads the app in the login prompt. So what I do is I create a login account that you go into file options and you say login, it auto logs in, make one layout with 2 fields. You probably guess what 2 fields are, username and password, and that's all they can reach. And when they're done putting that in, it calls a re-login as script step and feeds it in. But we really like keychain, we really like Face ID, we really like Touch ID. So I made, in the platform we have our own keychain management where you can add your own keychain and pull their Face ID and then do things within your solution. And so it's completely safe because when they type it in, it's not stored anywhere. And they validate correctly. You'll say you want to save this in your keychain, which is encrypted with their fingerprint, right, on their device. And so next time they come to that screen, it auto launches and it configures it. And so here's the third thing. This is the biggest thing in sync to deal with. And it's basically impossible, but we did it. So how do we get off the FileMaker script paradigm, where we run these scripts in these giant loops, we parse all this PHP, we parse all this JSON, and we watch. And if you're on an old phone, you're watching a long time, depending on how much you're parsing. How do we get away from the scripts? How do we get away from being locked in? How do we use what modern computing technology has given us, right? And that's threading and queues and operation queues and those things, right? And multi-core processors. We shouldn't ever be able to have to work on just one queue anymore, right? We spend good money on this equipment. We should be able to run 9 threads if you want to run 9 threads. I don't know why it's not an option, but now it is. What you have to do, because historically, let's say you give a user viewing rights to a customer record table, right? But they can view all the records they want, but they can't edit it. How does sync, under their permission set, write a record into a table they can only view? It just deny it, right? As it should. Well, if you go into that user's privilege set, the login privilege set, or the warehouse worker's privilege set, who can only view in almost everything, right? And you add one table for me called sync admin table, you give me full access to update those records on behalf of that user. So I don't have to do the right click on the script, grant full access permissions. And what's great about this permission versus a script that you right click and say, give me full access, is I can do all that in the background. You will never see a spinning wheel, you'll never see a delay, and I wish the connection was better, And I would love for you guys to come with me after this, and I will show you this process. I can load 1 million records in to these apps and type whatever I want in any other records at the same time. I can sit there, I can write a poem, and all these other tables are loading data, right? It's a beautiful thing. And so all you need to do, so go to that limited function, Lexi, right there, view limited down, yeah. Double click down here, right here, yeah. All you need to do is put our plugin function in there, and our sync can do whatever it wants without giving your user more rights than they need to have. And you have to log in with a password and username, at least in this version and previous versions, to even get to this point, right? And there's a whole bunch more on security that we won't have time to cover, but we've worked out some JWT tokenization and OAuth with Microsoft directly that will come straight from your file. So you could literally have 100 devices running this simultaneously, and it's not creating a backlog on your server at all, 0. And if you need more servers, you say more, and it's done. And we use Redis cache for heavy users, so all your records are going straight into cache instantly, which is wonderful. All the modern eBay companies, Facebook, they all use caches of different types, Memcache, whatever cache. And we get to control that. I guarantee the photo sync won't work, but I would love a way to show you our approach to photo sync. The connection won't be able to download 50 photos that I have waiting on the cloud. But what we did with photos, so we know that's a taboo subject in FileMaker. You can't fill a FileMaker file up with 1,000 images and videos. It will weigh it down, it will break it, it will corrupt it. True story. What we do is whenever you need a photo container, you take a regular text field and you throw it on the layout, wherever you want it. Draw it the size you want it, right? And you go into conditional formatting and add the function. We can at least do that step, I think. Those aren't fast enough to do anything else. Yeah. So, for example, and this is going to change everything for you guys, right here. So let's go to appointments. I don't have any records. And I'm going to go into edit mode. I can't even read that. And so what you do for the new photo container, hold on, I did a wrong shortcut. I can't even see that screen. There's too much to cover. So this is my custom login screen, by the way. Oh. Right? That's what they see when they log in. It only has the account that opened that only has access to 2 fields. If I want to launch Mac keychain, oh yeah, I do Mac keychain too. And I'm going to be doing Surface photo keychain as well. Whatever makes life easier, right? So for a photo container, you would take any old text photo like this, put it on your layout, draw it the way you want it, size it the way you want it, color it the way you want it, and when you're ready to assign a photo to this container, and this is a design scheme we're going to implement for all kinds of native UI. Whatever you see on the iPhone, we will put in that square for you. You say, hey, I want this in this square, and I want this data to feed this square, right? No more web viewers that have security issues and security limitations and don't have the latest libraries loaded into the browser. You'll draw your square just as a text field, and you will do a conditional formatting function. you'll add the function like this, and you'll do a formula. And what you need to do, and let's just keep it simple with the photo container, go to the plugin, go to our functions, and display photo. All I need from you guys at a bare minimum, because I'm going to give you ways to control the caching and the downsampling and all that. But the simplest thing that I want from you is the name of the photo and where it's stored, right? So you say the photo's name is actually in the field that I'm putting the photo on top of. That, you're done. Now whenever you run this and you take the photo with our custom script steps, to do this, so you're done with your photo container, it's going to want me to do more functions, and I can't even read down there. So you finished out the other two functions, and you go into your scripts, and you run this little guy. You run Haploo's take photo function. I give you our own photo camera picker. When you tell me where you want to put the URL and what the URL is for the image, I save it as just a string. C drive, whatever, if you're on Windows, Mac drive. And whenever you load that text box, I know that URL corresponds to a folder setting outside FileMaker somewhere in your system, and I go cache that image for you, right? If you have a lot of them, I'll cache the whole list for you before you even load the layout by doing set image cache on the layout. Oh, we're cut off? Oh, sorry. All right. Sorry. Okay. All right, well, come find me. We only made it through 10% of this. And none of that stuff worked, so. It just kept spinning out. They must be going through the router. So you can load 1,000 videos in list view, and it's instant, because you're using all the native cache of iOS to do that. And so for me and my clients and our organization that has 300 people, we won't have any of the setbacks that we run into ever again. Just, it's not a requirement. So, so anybody who wants to find me this week, I'll show you all our demos, our apps. We have 7 or 8 different ones. If me just screaming at you guys for 25 minutes really fast didn't really do anything. So.